Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about the basics of the DBQ rubric that we're going to be using for this year. This is the rubric that was used for last year's uh, kind of truncated emergency style exam. Uh, but I actually really like this rubric. I think that it's more forgiving for you guys. And this is the rubric we're going to be using for DBQs this year because I think that it helps you uh, better understand how to get the points on the rubric. And really, everything that's on this 10-point rubric is also on the College Board's rubric. So you're not missing anything. In fact, this I think will help you get more points on the official rubric. But for right now, just we're going to keep using this rubric. I'm going to change it a little bit throughout the year. But for right now, this is the rubric that we're going to be using. So first, let's talk about these first 2 points on the rubric. So context is the first point on the rubric. So the contextualization. So what the rubric says, and everything over here is exactly as what the rubric says, the contextualization asks for the broader historical context. That is relevant to the prompt, so or the topic of the DBQ. So it wants the context relevant to the prompt or relevant to the topic. The easy way to do this is to write a sentence or two that describes what was happening to the topic or with the topic prior to the time frame of the prompt. So the prompt is going to give you a time frame. Usually it'll be a few centuries, might be a few decades, depending on what the prompt is. All you've got to do is talk about that topic, but a little bit before the time frame of the prompt. So if the time frame of the prompt is something like 200 BCE to 200 CE, just for example, you'd want to talk about what was happening prior to that. So let's say the topic of the prompt is about trade. You would want to say something about trade. So for us, the contextualization would be something about trade prior to 200 BC. Just a sentence or two. It doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be super fancy. It just has to be something that's correct that relates to the topic of the prompt. So if the topic of the prompt was trade or empires or religion, whatever, you're just going to say something about trade or empires or religion prior to that time frame. That's all you've got to do. I suggest that you put this at the very beginning of your essay. This goes at the very beginning. This should be the very first thing in your essay. It should not be the very first thing that you do to write an essay. That requires a lot of planning. But the first thing that you write as part of your essay should be this broader historical context relevant to the prompt. And it doesn't have to be long, it just has to be a sentence or two. We'll practice with this when we actually start looking at our DBQ. But right now, this is what that means. Just a sentence or two that describes what was happening to the topic or with the topic prior to the time frame of the prompt. Okay, the next thing on the rubric is your thesis statement. The thesis is the most important part of your essay because the thesis is the answer to the question. This is the answer to the question. This is the most important part of the essay. Fortunately for us, a thesis is really easy to write. Because to write a thesis, all you have to do is take all the claims you're going to write, all the claims from your body paragraphs, and put them all in your thesis. Your thesis can be more than one sentence. In fact, it probably should be more than one sentence. It should be more than one sentence. The thesis is the answer to the question that they're asking you. This is going to be one of the last things you come up with, but it's going to be one of the very first things that you write because you're going to put this right after your context. Here is where your thesis goes. It goes after the contextualization. This stuff is all that you need to put into your introduction. So your introductory paragraph should be your contextualization, followed by your thesis. That's it. That's the only thing that should be in your introduction, your contextualization, and your thesis. You should not be writing a hook like your English teachers might teach you to do. You do not need to grab the reader's attention. You do not need to get them interested in what you're reading and what you're going to write. They have to read what you write. You don't have to get my attention. I'm paid to read your essays. So you don't have to get my attention. You don't have to be witty or clever. You just need to start your essay with a contextualization and a thesis. That's it. Now, the next thing we need to worry about are all of these points here about evidence and documents. We are going to, in a later video and in a later class, talk about how to source the documents to get this information. You've already been practicing with this when you do the sourcing assignments. That's all this is. But what we're going to do right now is talk about how to put together a body paragraph. You already know how to do this as well, because this is basically how you write your textbook assignments. So I make you write your textbook assignments in the format of a body paragraph. So let's see how you put together a body paragraph. So depending on the prompt, you might write 2 or 3 body paragraphs. Depending on what the prompt is and what you want your essay to say, you might write 2 or 3 body paragraphs. You might write 4, 5, and onward, because there's no set number of body paragraphs you have to write. When kids ask me how many body paragraphs do I need to have, or how many paragraphs go in an essay, my answer is the number of paragraphs is however many you need to answer the question. The number of body paragraphs you need is however many you need to answer the question. And the same applies to the number of sentences in a paragraph. It's however many you need to answer the question. It might be 3. It might be 7. It might be 18. It doesn't matter as long as you feel like you have answered the question. So however many sentences or however many paragraphs you need to answer the question, that's how many you need. So this is what goes into a body paragraph. The first thing you're going to write in a body paragraph is a topic sentence. A topic sentence is the same thing as your claim. A topic sentence is the same thing as a claim. Then you're going to give me a piece of evidence times 1, maybe 2, depending on how confident you feel about it. You're going to give me evidence. Maybe 1 piece of evidence, maybe 2 pieces of evidence. And then you've got to connect the dots. You have to analyze the evidence. Basically, what analyzing the evidence means is you've got to connect the dots. You have to show me why the evidence you just gave me supports the claim. Do not assume it is obvious. Do not assume it is obvious. Connect the dots for me. That's what this means. Show me why the evidence supports the claim. Take me by the hand and walk me through it. Explain it to me like I am 5 years old. Assume I have no idea what it is you're talking about. This is how you write a body paragraph. TEA. So you are always going to have a nice cup of tea when you write a body paragraph. Now, for our purposes, writing a DBQ, the evidence is going to come from the documents. So the evidence that is going to support our claim is going to come from the documents we've read. So this is where all the evidence comes from. DBQs are really nice because you don't have to give me a lot of evidence. Most of the evidence you need comes from the documents. So what kind of evidence do we want to give? There's 3 types of evidence we're going to have to play with when we write a DBQ. There's 3 types of evidence. There's evidence from the documents. Basically, you're just going to take the content from the document and apply it to the claim. Another type of evidence you may need to use is from your sourcing. So that's why I have you source documents. Because some of that sourcing information, telling me about the author or telling me about the historical situation or telling me the audience of a document, that is also evidence, and that can also help to support our claim. Now, the last type of evidence you might need to use to support your claim is evidence from beyond the documents. So this is stuff that's not in the documents that you have to remember. You need to remember something about this topic. So depending on how much evidence you want to put into your body paragraph, you might need to put in here maybe 3 pieces of evidence. But some of that evidence is just something from the document. Some of that evidence might be a bit of sourcing that is relevant to your claim. Some of that might be something that's not from the documents, but you remember it and it's related to the topic. So that covers all of this stuff. All of these 7 points relates to the evidence. And all of those 7 points are going to be found in the body paragraphs. We're not going to worry about this complexity point. We'll talk about it later, but it's not something that you need to worry about. So for right now, this is the basic overview of how to write a DBQ. So in subsequent videos, we are going to talk about a specific DBQ and how to source the documents, and then we'll finally put this whole thing together in a later video. But until then, this is Mr. Nissen signing off.